The Topsfield Library Society was founded on March 20th, 1794, under the leadership of Reverend Asabel Huntington, pastor of the Congregational Church. Each member of the new society was assessed 20 shillings for the purchase of books. It was agreed to keep the library within 1 mile of the meeting house and to have it open one afternoon a month for the circulation of books. This is a model of the 1759 meeting house, located where the present church stands now. There were 80 original members, including 3 women. One curious provision in the bylaws was that books had to be taken out in alphabetical order, and that a requested book should always go to the highest bidder present. 68 volumes were purchased as follows: 20 history, 13 religion, 15 travel, 10 literature, 2 biography, 1 agriculture, and 6 philosophy. A bookcase was purchased in 1796 along with a letter to cover the books. This bookcase and most of the books have been kept in an upstairs room at the Parson Capon House in recent years. We also show a close-up of some of the old books. The library was incorporated in 1805, and the bylaws were revised. In those days, the bookcase and its contents were kept at the home of the librarian. Mr. Huntington died in 1813, and without his active influence, interest in the library waned. There were no library meetings between 1814 and 1824, and the membership dwindled to 15 proprietors. Then interest in the library was rekindled by Reverend Rodney Dennis of the Congregational Church. For the next few years, the bookcase was kept at 40 South Main Street and then at 11 Prospect Street, shown here. But it was hard to sustain interest, and several attempts were made to sell the collection, although not carried out. So in 1854, when the Topsfield Academy was flourishing, the library was transferred there. During the next decade or two, parallel efforts to create libraries were made by groups interested in agriculture, the local schools, the Topsfield Athenaeum Association, and the Ladies' Society of the Congregational Church. Finally, in 1875, a meeting was convened to establish a free town library. The effort was spearheaded by Messrs. Todd, Merriam, Allen, Balch, Fitz, and Reverend Anson MacLeod, a long-time distinguished minister of the Congregational Church. The several groups contributed their books to the new organization, and monetary gifts were received as well. 7,700 books circulated among 243 borrowers in the first year of operations. Mr. Sidney A. Merriam deserved much credit for this successful beginning, and his death the next year in 1876 was a severe blow. He endowed the library with $1,000. Reverend MacLeod's personal library was given to the town library in 1885 to become the MacLeod Department. By 1906, however, the MacLeod books constituted only 0.5% of the library's circulation of about 5,200 books. The new library was housed in the newly completed town hall in the room that now serves as the clerk's office. The first paid librarian was Miss Victoria Reed, and she earned $50 a year. After a while, this room was required by the selectmen, and the library was moved to the southwest corner of the building, where the selectmen now meet. The library remained here until 1935. Some of the library problems during the town hall years had a familiar ring. For example, the 1906 report of the trustees included the following: the last 2 years the town has not seen fit without a special appropriation to pay for the services of the janitor, who has the care of the library room. It seems reasonable and right that the town be responsible for that item rather than to have it paid for by funds from the library. It may be said further that it is doubtful whether the income of the funds can be legally used for any other purpose than the purchase of books. Land for a new building was bought by the town in 1912 from George Francis Dow, but funding problems delayed the project for some 20 years. A bequest of $15,000 was received from David Pingree, along with smaller sums from other donors. Then a grant of about $10,500 under the National Recovery Act, sponsored by the Roosevelt administration, finally made it possible to proceed with construction. The building was designed by Harold Field Kellogg, a young Boston architect, with Mr. Balch and George Francis Dow serving as his consultants. When the project was completed, the town owned a handsome library building located in the very heart of the community. These photographs were taken at Mr. Dow's request on August 28, 1935. The front door opened to an attractive entrance hall containing the librarian's desk, files, and bookcases. A series of murals portraying life in colonial Topsfield, painted by Mr. Kellogg, graced the walls on three sides. To the right of the entrance door was a well-appointed reading room. Crossing over to the other side of the building, we find ourselves in a room lined with bookcases. The Topsfield room was upstairs over the reading room. Here were housed the 1794 bookcase, a model of the 1759 meeting house, a model of the Capon House, and other items of historical interest. The other room upstairs was essentially an art gallery. In the late 1940s and in the 50s, after World War II, like so many other towns, Topsfield began to grow. This affected the library, and in 1964 an architect was retained to redesign the basement for use as a children's room. Since that time, a children's librarian has conducted regular programs for children. Here we see Mrs. Eloise Shepner reading to a group of children. In 1964, the reading rooms were air-conditioned and the Friends of the Library group was formally organized. This group has been of great value to the library by providing passes to Boston museums, organizing all sorts of programs, and providing financial assistance to accomplish many worthwhile purposes. 1972 and 1973 were critical years. An expansion of the library was needed, and at the same time, use of the upstairs rooms had to be curtailed to comply with new safety regulations. A fire escape was required, and the load-bearing capacity of the second floor was deemed to be inadequate. $27,000 was voted for a study at a special town meeting. The construction bid to accomplish the resulting plan came to $350,000, however, and was rejected as being too expensive. A less ambitious program to renovate the library for $155,000 was voted by the town. That decision placed growth limitations on the library, however, and resulted in further expansion needs almost before the 1973 renovations were completed. The work was done in 1973 while the library again operated out of the town hall for several months. The second floor was reinforced and handicapped entrance facilities were provided. The two upstairs rooms were converted to stacks. A storage area was made into a gallery. Most of the items of historical interest, including the 1794 bookcase and its contents, were moved to the Capen House. 600 people came to the open house held on January 21, 1974, when the library was reopened. The upstairs stacks, along with the stacks found downstairs behind the circulation desk, provided space for thousands of books stored in a well-ordered fashion. But in 1981, the building inspector found that more repairs were essential. So, among other things, the front steps were rebuilt. Along with this work, some very attractive plantings were introduced at the front of the building. From the very beginning, the new building was more than a place devoted only to books. The murals in the entrance hall and the paintings upstairs testify to that. The completion of the gallery made possible an ever-expanding series of many different cultural programs. Each year sees several exhibitions of paintings by local artists. There have been exhibits by potters, by wood carvers, and sculptors. There have been lectures on music, on literature, and poetry readings. There have been slide presentations on nature and local history. Paintings are on display in many parts of the building, such as the painting of Old Topsfield by Richard Wyman that hung for many years in the family bank. This was a view of the reference room where most of the modern equipment used by the library and its patrons was located. 2 CD-ROM equipped computers were available where one could access all kinds of information, such as complete texts of many magazines not found in the reading room. There was also a fax machine. Current magazines and new books were on display in the reading room. Patrons could browse the new volumes before deciding what books to read. A very popular area was the collection of videos that could be borrowed. A microfilm reader was available in the upstairs stacks, where over 20 years of the Tri-Town transcript could be read. The library is a busy place. Witness all the cars usually parked on South Common Street. Over the past 25 years, the circulation of books, magazines, and records has been at a high level, increasing to about 80,000 pieces in 1994. At present, the library's collection of books exceeds 47,000 volumes, and the total circulation is about 147,000 items. But patrons have access to a greater range of choices. An online catalog is available to tap the resources of the Merrimack Valley Library Consortium. The library is administered by the library director and a board of trustees who are elected by the citizens of the town and serve for 3 years. They meet with the director on a monthly basis. Funds to operate the library are voted at annual town meetings, and most of the money is derived from the tax base. Income from certain trust funds is also available, however, and the largest of the funds is a bequest to the town of Topsfield from Mr. George L. Gould, who died in 1921. Mr. Gould's will specified that upon the death of his last child, which occurred in 1989, a portion of the remaining estate should go to the town of Topsfield to be held as a trust. 1/2 of the income was to be spent for the purchase of books for the public library, and the balance for the purchase of works of art, if provisions shall have been made for the reception of such articles. If not, said 1/2 may also be used for the repair and upkeep of the library building and the grounds. The services and facilities of a modern library have changed dramatically since Mr. Gould's days, and therefore the probate court ruled on the interpretation of his will. At the time of the 200th anniversary of the library in 1994, the trustees in office began a study of how the library might utilize these funds to best serve the town in the years ahead. That board is pictured here. Rear row, Karen Dow, Martha Morrison, and Joe Collins. Front row, Harry Gorbolewski, Director Sheila Glowacki, and Eleanor Ann Steenson. Catherine Mara was not present for the photo. The shortcomings of the 1994 library building were documented, and the trustees engaged consultants to determine how the problems might best be solved. The basic limitations that had to be overcome were the following. The building was too small to allow for expected growth. Many of the stacks were difficult to use because of narrow aisles and a low ceiling. The building no longer met the standards for handicapped access. The gallery was too small to accommodate reasonable sized groups for cultural programs. The children's room was far too small. Insufficient seating capacity was available for students to study in quiet. And finally, we are entering an age of information explosion. A modern library requires an adequate number of computer terminals that connect to the internet and access information from CD-ROMs. While the handsome library building constructed in 1935 has served the town well for over half a century, the time came for making changes to adapt it for the new age. The work done in recent months was directed towards that end. This chart records the sequence of events. At a special town meeting held on February 27, 1996, the town voted to purchase the 11 High Street house using Gould funds. Originally, it was planned to use the building as a temporary library, but that turned out to be impractical. Instead, the building was used later by the contractor for administrative purposes. The house will be moved off the lot in the spring of 1999. A grant application was filed with the state on April 10, 1996. Schematic design plans were presented to the town and approved at a town meeting on May 7, 1996. On September 19, 1996, the state awarded a grant of $1,331,247 toward the project. On October 29th and 30th, the town voted to accept the state grant and to exclude the town's library debt from Proposition 2.5 limitations. The cost of the undertaking is about $3,400,000 and is financed as follows. From the Gould Fund, $1,300,000. From state grants, $1,331,000. And by the town, $769,000. In January 1997, the architectural firm of A. Anthony Tepe Associates was selected. As building plans developed, there were the usual requests for building permits and design and cost reviews, leading eventually to the requesting of bids and the selection of a contractor. G&R Construction of Malden was chosen. On August 23, 1997, day-to-day library operations were transferred to a temporary quarters in the shopping center. Library services were conducted from this location until December 23, 1998. On November 7, 1997, a groundbreaking ceremony was held after hearing from Ilya Marnik, Vice Chair of the Massachusetts Board of Library Commissioners, State Senator Bruce Tarr, State Representative Ted Speliotis, and Director Sheila Glowacki. The group went out for a symbolic groundbreaking. This group included the state officials, the library trustees, friends of the library, and a member of the Board of Selectmen. Then came the real work. Asbestos had to be removed in the old building, and the library addition of 1973 had to come down to make way for the new design. Finally, after many months, the day came when the temporary library was closed and the books were returned. This was a volunteer effort involving several hundred townspeople of all ages. Some 45,000 books packed in some 7,000 bags were transferred from the shopping center to the library on rainy days by truck and then carried into the stack areas of the new building by a long book brigade line. Then the bagged books were placed in the stacks where they are to be kept. During the whole construction period, the building committee met regularly with the architect, the general contractor, and many subcontractors. Here we see them discussing computer wiring details. Seated around the table from left to right are Ralph Castagna, building committee, Vincent Barry, project manager, Mike Carpenter, computer installation contractor, Martha Morrison, building committee chair, and Scott Dow, building committee. The library board of trustees that has seen the work through to completion is shown here with the library director. Front row from left to right we have Catherine Mara, Martha Morrison, and Joan Pinella. Rear row from left to right are Sheila Glowacki, Walter Rehak, and Karen Dow, chair. Audrey Iorochi was not present for the photo. The murals depicting Topsfield's early history in the entrance hall of the original building remain, and a large new mural now graces a wall in the new children's library. It was created by artist David Fichter of Cambridge. He selected Topsfield scenes to blend with themes appreciated by children to stimulate curiosity about our world. This is Mr. Fichter at work. All of the shortcomings of the original building have been addressed, and the library is able now to accommodate the functions of a modern library in addition to many diverse cultural activities. This program was prepared well before the library opened, and so the remaining pictures show the project still incomplete. Each of these positions is designed to accommodate a computer terminal. Patrons may use their own laptop computers at these tables. This is one of two closed rooms for quiet study. There is a large meeting room that may be divided into two separate rooms with a pull-down screen on the far wall. One of the two downstairs rooms in the old building will house books of current interest, while the other room is arranged for the reading of periodicals. This is looking into the new area from the old entrance hall, and is followed by several other views around the library. Now you have an opportunity to inspect this new facility. It has all been made possible by Mr. Gould's generosity, by help from the state, by the support of the citizens of Topsfield, and particularly by the dedication of the Library Board of Trustees and the Building Committee.